Joining me, Sky News Political Editor Andrew Clennell. Andrew, welcome. Let's start with revelations you had this afternoon out of the Labor Caucus meeting earlier this morning. And the PM revealing that the marginal seats he's looking at are known now, named. Canning is one in WA, Sturt in South Australia, Banks in New South Wales, Menzies in Victoria, Bass and Braddon in the north of Tassie, and a number of seats across the board in Queensland. What do you make of this list? Some of them there, I'd say, well, absolutely look at those margins. They've got to be in Labor's size. But others like Canning, that's Andrew Hastie's seat. Isn't that more about playing with the mind of the coalition, do you think, than an actual winnable seat?
I think it is about playing with the mind of the coalition, but I also think it's about trying to give his team a rev when they've just seen Australia's most popular figure, who is a Labor person, depart the scene. So there might be WA Labor members of caucus who are fearful of their seats with Mark McGowan going. And what he's saying to them, I guess, is we can actually win extra seats in WA. In my view, Peter, good luck getting Andrew Hastie's seat. Can't see it happening. But I think some of those other targets are achievable. I think there's a potential for hubris there. I think there's a potential for complacency on the part of Labor. Is that what you're saying? Or?
Yes.
I think that there is a potential for hubris here. I mean, one of the things that concerns me about these comments, these are the sorts of things that should be left to internal meetings and not... it was a very short caucus meeting, and that's one of the things that he said. Look, I call me old-fashioned, Peter, but I think they should just worry about running the country and leave that to their little closed-door meetings, those sort of comments, because it does sound like you're taking the electorate for granted. It has the potential to do so. And one thing that was actually said to me at one point about Scott Morrison's, some of his people, was that immediately after 2019 election, within a week or two, they were drawing up a list of seats they could go and win, extra seats. And it's like, well, hang on, you just won an election. How about you run the country first?
Yeah, that's where the politics becomes a parlour game, and it's less about, as you say, running the country, good process, policy and all of that. The McGowan move yesterday is a bit of a game changer. I mean, there's him and daylight in the West in terms of political leaders over there, and the next cab off the rank as Premier is not going to have the same sort of cut-through as he has. He certainly aided the PM in winning the West. This talk about an early election, talk us through the thinking here.
Well, it just appears to me that the government's riding high. The Voice could change that if it were to go down, but let's say it succeeds. He'd cop a backlash if he went too early, but there's kind of a reason to go early in the sense that if you were to search for March 2025, there's a WA fixed term election then. If you were to go to October 2024, there's a fixed term Queensland election then. So you can't get involved in the month prior to either of those in terms of campaigning, or the campaigns get mixed up. That's just a tradition. You don't mix federal campaigns with big state campaigns. And there's a double dissolution trigger which is becoming apparent, that being the Housing Future Fund bill, which the Greens and the Coalition made clear that they're not going to pass. So you've got that option. I'm leaning towards mid to late 2024. It depends on the polls. It depends upon the economic conditions. This is not a black and white argument or suggestion that I can make to you here, because there are so many variables in this. But I think the government's looking at it. Absolutely they are, yeah.
Oh, I say this having been married to a federal director who did 14 years in the job of running campaigns. I mean, governments will call an election when they think they're going to win. Prime ministers will look at absolutely every option, and people like my husband and the current incumbents on both sides now literally have a chessboard of options for a PM, and they keep everything going and everything alive. But I want to pick up that point you made about the Voice. I mean, I think if the Voice goes down, and I hope it does, it'll be diabolical for the PM. But talking about the Voice getting up, I don't think it's sunlit uplands if the Voice gets up, and this would be a reason to go early for the Labor Party. If it gets up, you'd think that there would be this general round of applause for the Prime Minister. That might be there for a couple of weeks, but of course, once they start to legislate the extent and the powers of the Voice, once people understand that they've been duped, that they've voted for something about goodwill and recognition, in fact, when they see the legislation and all of the entrails come out, we see how much it is about power, I think there'd be buyer's remorse there. I think people will probably punish him at the polls. So I'd be trying to get ahead of that and go earlier than the whole, fight about the voice becomes apparent in the parliament. That's a concern for him too.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at it from the point of view that he looks a winner if it gets up. He looks, he won the election, he won the voice, he's progressing that. And then, as I said earlier, it just all depends on economic conditions. It's such a big factor in it all. And it feels like we're on a hill in terms of inflation. We've got to come down that hill. How smooth is that going to be? And the Labor Party is hoping when we get to the bottom of that hill, it's smooth enough that they can go to an election. That's kind of the play at the moment, Peter.
And it's the pace of the drop. It's the pace of the drop because we're coming down slower than the RBA would hope, which is why interest rate rises are still on the table. With the departure of McGowan, I was listening to you this afternoon, and you're right to make the point that there's been a whole lot of now incumbent pandemic leaders who have left the stage. We know late this afternoon in the West, Amber Jade Sanderson, she's the Health Minister, she's likely to become Premier, beating out the Deputy there, Roger Cook. This is a left faction meeting. I don't think that anyone but the factions have a say here. But you've only got Andrew Barr then, Daniel Andrews and Anastasia Palaszczuk left standing post-pandemic. In fact, Andrews copped a question about that today. Let's have a listen.
It's a rare thing in politics to be able to go on your own terms, and that's exactly what Mark McGowan has done. No, I'm all good, and there are no easy days in these jobs. That's not a complaint. That's just a fact. You've got this sort of hopeful tone about you. We've got a lot to get on with.
He mightn't be tired, but there's a few people around Victoria that are tired of him. But I mean, your point's well made, Andrew.
I'll be surprised if Daniel Andrews runs at the next election. Let me just make that prediction on your show now and be held to it. But I think it'll be a year or two off before he retires. It's interesting, WA too, because what you're seeing there is one union's declared for Amber Jade Sanderson and one has now in just the last hour for Roger Cook. So there's still a contest there, and Roger Cook's got a running mate now, Rita Saffioti. But it's just a bad look to see the unions, coming out and backing a particular candidate. We're not even talking about the factions of caucus, and the interesting thing about Amber Jade Sanderson, she presents well. It's great to have a woman leader, etc. She's only been, I've noticed today, a cabinet minister for 2 years since the 21 state election. So. Wow, the difference, the drop-off there from McGowan, 5 years opposition leader, 6 years Premier, to potentially going to someone who's been in Cabinet for 2 years, that spells trouble for Labor at a state level. And if Labor continues to have trouble at a state level, particularly at areas like the health system, which are in trouble in over there, that is going to affect the federal result. So, again, there's the argument that why wouldn't you look at an early election before things might turn to manure for the state government in Western Australia.
Just quickly, Labor are chancing their arm, I'm told, at a 10% seat in Fadden in the upcoming by-election.
Yeah, they have decided to run today. The local branch has decided. I think Albanese ummed and ahed about it. They don't expect to win, but they could take another swing off Peter Dutton, which would damage him. So that'll be another interesting race. Not as interesting as Aston. But having said that, I sat with you on that Aston night, Peter, and made the bold prediction that Peter Dutton would fall over the line, and he didn't. So who knows in by-elections and elections these days?
Yeah, we've got a busy few weeks ahead. Thank you, Andrew Clennell.